Afternoon, everyone. Let's see if I got everybody in here. Looks like it. Okay.
Hey, Rich.
Hey. So, all right. Happy New Year to everybody. It's first class of the new year. Hope everybody had good holidays. Um, and we're just going to get right into this. As I had said, there were. In the December 2023 release for Zipforms, um, there was only one new form, and that form was the buyer homeowners insurance advisory, and it is bundled with the RPA, and it's basically it talks about the problems getting insurance in the state of California. Um, so, um, so that is, yeah, as we all know, that California has this problem, and companies are leaving, and it's hard to get insurance, and you need to make sure in the RPA or before you release contingencies for investigation that the buyer has secured insurance, because that is part of investigation. Now, most likely coming in June, insurability is probably going to be a contingency on its own. But right now it is not. So don't release all investigation unless your buyer has insurance. That's really, really important. So that's the only new one.
Rich,
So
can I ask
they
a
are
question? Can
sure.
I ask a question about that? Since it's not yet a separate contingency, if we're doing, can we do something like all physical except ins insurance?
Yeah, to it allows you to uh, not to release all of them. The insurability is one of the options not to release when on the contingency removal. Okay. So let's go to the first revision, and that would be the RLA, the listing agreement. Um, and so the change on the listing agreement is this. It's updated to include the statutory limitation that maximum exclusive listing period cannot exceed 24 months, and recording listing is prohibited. This is the only change, this red area right here, and effective January 1st of this year, 2024, a law went into effect that listing agreements cannot be written for more than 24 months. And this is to alleviate the issue of out of state companies. I guess there were companies that would come in. Well, it had to be a realtor because they had to have a license, but they would come in and write up a 40-year listing agreement. And in that listing agreement, uh, they would they would also put a lien on the property, and they would give them the owners some money up front. You know, list this with me. I'll give you $10,000, $15,000, whatever the amount is. We're going to write this listing agreement, and then it becomes a lien on the property. That's why this law went into effect, and that is why now you cannot write anything more than 24 months. Once again, remember that you have to put a beginning date and an end date for a contract to be valid. So, any questions on this? I'm not hearing any. The next one is the residential month-to-month lease. Let me open this. Hold on. Okay. All right, hold on. Let me share this. Where'd you go? Let's see it. Hold on, hold on. Should be a drinking game. That how many times do I say hold on in a meeting? Okay. So here is the residential lease or month-to-month rental agreement. It's updated to make it clear that that periodic pest control treatment paragraph only applies to single-family homes, and the insurance paragraph changed to only require tenant liability policy to name the housing provider or the property manager as additional interest, not additionally insured. So, and then there was a paragraph added that the local jurisdictions may require an addenda. So let's look at what these changes are. The first is 11G, that periodic pest control, that who's going to pay for it? Is the landlord going to pay for it, or is the tenant going to pay for it? Shall pay for periodic pest control by the following provider, excuse me. This obligation shall only be applicable if the premises is a house, and the periodic pest control treatment is being provided at the execution of this agreement. The current cost of the treatment is, and then you put in a number. So basically, if a landlord currently has pest control that they're paying for monthly, are they going to move that cost over to the tenant? And if so, here's the name of the provider, and this is how much it's going to be. Or is the landlord going to pay for it? So that's the first change. Sorry. Then the second change is this.
Rich,
yes, go
about
ahead.
the pest control. What if it's part of HOA? Because it's usually I just usually
Why.
In the HOA part.
Well, is it a single family house?
Yes.
So it's a single family house, and
HOA pays for pest control.
the HOA pays for it. Then I would say that the housing provider takes care of it.
Okay.
Because it's not, you're not looking to pass that cost on to the
right, but then we don't really know the cost of it. So okay.
Is there a way to, let's see,
It's part of like your dues.
Right, I understand that, but I'm just saying, I guess you would say housing provider shall pay for periodic pest control by the following service provider, and you could write in there provided as part of HOA dues and not put a number. That's what I would do in that instance. Okay.
Rich,
Yes.
how you doing?
Yes. All right.
On that same issue, if you're entering into a new lease with it, is this the time that you would determine who's paying for that? In
Yes,
other words,
absolutely.
so it would be the tenant's responsibility if the landlord didn't want to do it.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Mm-hmm. And then the second revision on the lease is that just making it clear that the liability policy, if you check the box that the tenant shall obtain liability insurance, That the liability policy shall name the housing provider and property manager, if applicable, as additional interest, not additionally insured. They are not being insured by the property. They have an interest in the property, so that if the policy is changed, canceled, or not renewed, they would be notified. So since it's part of the lease. So that's what this change is. Any questions on that? Not seeing any. And then the last is that if there may be city or local requirements, such as rent stabilization, may apply. So it's just, I don't know why that never was in there, but evidently it was. Any questions?
Rich, can you roll back up to the additionally insured? I thought it said
Yeah.
and two. Okay, so it says one as an additional interest and two as an additional insured, if available from the insurer.
Right.
Oh, it does say that, doesn't it? Now that the description doesn't say that. The description that CAR puts out, but the change to only require tenant liability policy to name as additional interests, not additionally insured. That's interesting.
I guess one is required and two is
if it's available. But I'm gonna email CAR forms CAR forms at car.org to see if that's a mistake, because sometimes they make mistakes on these forms.
we're just
But
human.
because it's contrary to what they're actually putting out as to their descriptions. So
Okay, thanks, Rich.
all right. Any other questions?
Not to keep harping on that part, but what she just said, I'm sorry, I didn't catch who it was. Is that how I read that is actually as a notification, right? The measure shall name, property available as an additional requiring insured to notify such person as an additional.
Right.
Insured. So to me, they still have to have it. They just couldn't be notified. I don't know. I still see it as.
But I don't see it as the point that I saw in the reasoning for this was that they would be notified if it's not renewed or it's canceled or anything, but that they aren't additionally insured. So let me go and kind of find that
Thanks,
find out
Rich.
an answer regarding that. Okay.
Yep.
Any other questions on this?
Rich,
Mhm.
back at the first page, we were talking about security deposits. And
Right.
they passed the law, went into effect in January.
It did not. David didn't. It goes into effect July 1st.
It goes into effect, but it passed.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
July 1st.
Yes.
And
July
and
1st.
yeah, nobody could give me CAR or an attorney, a real estate attorney, couldn't give me a definitive if the house was furnished or unfurnished.
It doesn't matter.
Unfurnished. Yeah. Okay. Just a maximum of one.
The most you can charge, whether it's furnished, unfurnished, is $1,000 as of July 1st.
Right.
But the exemptions are that if they're a mom and pop, that they only have one or two,
Right.
or it's under an LLC or corporation.
Right. Right. Okay.
Okay. But if they have more than one in their, then the most is one. And for military personnel, it's 1 month's rent.
Right. Right. Okay.
No matter what. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
I have
All
a
right.
question, Rick, sorry.
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
Thank you. Regarding this issue, how about the pet deposit? Is it still including in the original deposit, or can we?
It's the most you can charge. So that's the most you can charge. And this is what I say, and this is what attorneys say. Why are you charging a pet deposit that just covers the pet for damage when you have a deposit that covers any damage?
Right.
Why limit it to
Right.
the pet? So landlords, oh, you have a pet, I want to charge a deposit. It makes no sense. You got to talk them out of that because it doesn't make sense, especially since they're only going to get 1 month's rent now. It's like it has to cover everything. So, yeah. Okay.
Well,
Thank you.
back on that, just one last thing.
Sure.
Can you go back? I know the old term was first and last and 1 month as security deposit.
Right.
So
Mhm.
are you allowed to take 2 months in advance and 1
No.
month as security deposit?
No.
Okay,
You're allowed to take 1 month's rent and then the security deposit. Or if somebody's going to pay rent in advance, it cannot be less than 6 months.
gotcha.
Okay.
Okay.
Got it?
But I
Okay.
just heard something. It actually wasn't last month's rent. It's never been last month's rent. It's first month's rent and 2 months. It was 2 months. Just
Last,
I'm
what do you
old.
mean? No. Dave and I are really, really old, and it used to be first, last.
Okay, wait
And
a
security
minute.
deposit, yes.
You guys forget my DRE number starts 008. I'm 1984, baby.
Well, I'm 82, so I've been doing it long enough.
Yeah. All right. So the next one.
Quick question,
Sure.
Rich. So, let's say if there is a pet, right? And if the
Yes.
homeowners allows pets. So, if he wants to include it in the overall deposit amount, so maybe we can do like the first month, right? Rent and then like an additional maybe 500,
No.
so like all
The
together.
whole thing has to be total, no more. Currently, 2 months rent for unfurnished, 3 months rent for furnished. But as of
Mhm.
July 1st, it'll be 1 month's rent. And that total has to be 1 month as of July 1st. Okay. And as I just said, why charge a pet deposit when you have to attribute that damage specifically to the pet? Whereas damage is damage. So if you're going to charge damage, then you shouldn't limit it just to the pet.
Got it.
Okay. All right. So the next one is the request for repair. Okay. If any of you have done a request for repair since January 1st, you notice something really different about the request for repair. You know that the seller, when responding to a request for repair, was very limited as to what they could do on this form. It used to be, I think they could only accept it as is, or they could accept it or revise it to RRRR. Well, now you can do everything right here on the request for repair. So the seller can agree to it, agree to all the buyer's requests, or they can partially agree, and the seller only agrees to the following and check all that apply, and the seller agrees to all the buyer's requests except whatever, or they can give a credit, or they agree to modify the purchase price, or other, I don't know what other pretty much would be, but you can do it all on this form, and that's we all should be yay, because why do we need another form? It's just they can just do it right here. So that was the only change, and I say it's about time. Any questions on that? Oh, I got a chat. Let's see.
Comment, love it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. So no questions. I'm going to stop that. The next one is the seller's purchase of replacement property. So let's go here. All right. Pull this back and forth. Sorry. All right. So the seller's purchase of replacement property. Here they added language to require the seller to prove evidence that seller has replacement property and allowing buyer to cancel if seller does not give proof or if the replacement property transaction fails. So you'll see in 1A what was added: the seller shall deliver to buyer at time of removal of the finding replacement property contingency proof of replacement property, either a copy of the contract of the purchase or replacement of the replacement property, and the contact information and escrow number of that purchase or a signed lease or rental agreement for replacement property or other written evidence of replacement property. So that is at the time that the contingency is removed for the replacement property. Because remember, you can also on this form keep the contingency in place until the close of the replacement property, and that's 1C. You would check that there. But there is an added notation here: the seller by scheduled close of escrow date for the they just added the word for replacement property. So then they've added number 3: if seller's replacement property is in or enters escrow, or there is another agreement and either party to that escrow or agreement, what they're referring to is a lease, gives the other a notice of cancellation, seller within 2 days thereafter shall deliver to buyer written notice of that cancellation. So they need to let them know if that falls out, that you need to let the buyer know that it has canceled. So, and then the buyer's right to cancel. Go ahead. So somebody have a question? Nope. Okay. So the buyer has a right to cancel after first giving seller a notice to perform if seller fails to give the proof of replacement. So they can cancel because they haven't given the proof after a notice to perform. Or they can cancel if the seller gives notice. If the seller gives notice to seller of either party's cancellation of agreement. Oh my God, that really doesn't read well, does it? So if seller gives notice to seller of either, I think that's a typo. See, here we go. I think it's if seller gives notice to buyer of either party's cancellation of the agreement of replacement property. I think that's what that's supposed to be. So another thing to give to car forms. So so if the seller says that you've canceled, that other transaction is canceled, then this gives the right to the buyer to cancel. So do we have any questions about the replacement property? I am not seeing any. Okay. Let's see what's next. Already done that. There we go. Okay, hold on. The TOPA. Let me share this. Okay, the TOPA, the tenant occupied property addendum. So if the property to be delivered vacant, seller to identify how seller was able to get the tenants to leave. This is interesting that they have to reveal how they got the tenants to leave. The new paragraph added if buyer is a tenant. Okay, so the first change is 1B3. If seller is able to remove existing tenants prior to close of escrow, seller, as applicable, shall disclose to buyer I1 when the property became vacant. 2, whether the tenant vacated voluntarily, and if so, whether seller paid the tenant to leave. 3, whether seller filed a lawsuit to evict the tenant, and if so, whether the lawsuit ended in a judgment. So that is now a requirement under the TOPA, that the seller has to reveal, if it's being delivered vacant, when it was vacated and how it was vacated. Okay. I just read something came out that an enormous amount of money in the last 3 years has been paid to tenants in order to get them out. I mean, some ridiculous amount of money, like cash, in a purchase, we call it cash for keys, but it's kind of the same concept with a tenant, but it's like some ridiculous amount of money. I wish I had at my fingertips, but unfortunately. So landlords are doing that. They're paying them money in order to get them out. So that's now a requirement to tell how you vacate. And then C was added that, go ahead.
Wouldn't that be in the TDS? I mean, what bearing does that have on the transaction?
Well, the bearing is, my guess is the bearing would be that the buyer would want to know if they were
murdered,
how the tenant was gotten out. So are they well, I mean, how are they are they a happy tenant that they got out, or if they paid them off? That's good to know, because if the tenant comes back to the new buyer saying, hey, I have this disclosure from the seller, he paid you money to get out. So that's good to know. And then obviously if they were evicted, so I think that's where this is coming from.
I have experience in this, so I'm happy to see that on there. And when I get a buyer that wants a property where there's a tenant, I'm like, oh no.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
And then C is if the buyer is a tenant in the property. We've never seen this before, that the on this form. But if the tenant is buying the property, then that's covered on this form now. And then the buyer occupies the property, and if it's a unit number, the TOPA form shall not apply to the property or units occupied by the buyer unless outlined in 1C. It talks about the security deposit. Seller shall transfer the buyer through escrow all unused tenants' deposits. If any units not occupied with buyer, other terms of the TOPA shall apply. So if there's more than if the tenant is buying a building and there are more units that they're not occupying, then everything else relating to the TOPA applies. So any questions about that? Let's see. Then it goes the added number 7, security deposits, and itemization of all lawful deductions made from tenant security deposits, if any, and a statement of security deposits remaining after any lawful deductions have been made. They're notating that there is a sample letter, CAR on Zipforms, they do have sample letters. So that's in regards to the security deposit. Any questions?
Wouldn't most of that stuff be covered under estoppel agreements and stuff like that?
If you know how many people don't do estoppel, I mean, and if it's a single family home, that's being rented, I mean, a lot of people don't do it. So this is another way to take care of it. Okay, the next thing is just I want to remind you, and they did make a change to this, that if something is if it is an exempt property, we still should be using the water heater statement of compliance. State law requires that the water heater needs to be since they're not doing a TDS, all this is covered in the TDS, and so we just need the certification. And they did revise this that the form is used if a seller is exempt, and it could be provided in conjunction with the ESD for REO sales. CAR form, water heater, and smoke alarm compliance are to be used. So that's the other form that we could use. What we should be using also is the water heater. Not also. You either use this one or you use the water heater smoke detectors. Michael, your question about office TCs aware of what? I'm not sure. I just saw that you put in about these. This form is needed. Yeah. Yeah, I'll remind them. They should. So any questions on this form?
Rich, my questions kind of goes
Yeah.
with what Michael's saying. Are these forms going to be added to command? And if so, when?
I don't get into when things are added to command. I mean,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, I'll make sure that they know. But
I
yeah,
have one other question about the VHIA that you talked about, the insurance. I thought
yeah,
I heard you say something about it was going to be bundled in the RPA. Did you say that?
it is bundled with the
I
RPA.
just did a RPA this week, just Sunday, and it was, Saturday, and it was
Well,
not.
we're gonna go over the changes to the RPA, so I'll look for it.
Okay, I just
in
looked
there.
to see my deal,
Alright.
so that's why I looked at it, but okay.
Oh, okay. All right. All right. The next, let's see, the assignment. The only thing that's changed with the assignment of agreement, then amendment. Excuse me, it's an amendment to an exist. If the buyer changes, or if you know it's changing into an LLC, you all know that you need to use an assignment of agreement amendment, saying who the new people are, and that yes, they have to initial, those new buyers have to initial all the previous documents that have gone on with this transaction. And this happens, the seller can't object to the assignment in the it defaults to 17 days in the contract, but after that, it doesn't mean that after that it can't be done. It's just that the seller doesn't have to automatically agree for it to be done. So just that FYI. So the change of this is it's just a minor change here. Sometimes a buyer is given consideration to assign it. We all know there's straw buyers. I mean, it was prevalent a while back, but where somebody buys a property, then in the middle of the transaction assigns it to somebody else and gets money for that assignment. So if the buyer has received money, it needs to be disclosed here how much, and then they've added the buyer has not received, and then they added those 4 words that really change the meaning, and will not receive. So it's like, well, at the time I hadn't received any, but this is just making sure you will not receive any money for this assignment. Because,
What kind of
sellers may
assignment
want
they're referring to?
that you're changing buyers. That's an assignment.
Mhm.
So if a buyer, in the middle of a transaction, is changing, I'm no longer buying it, this person's buying it, or I'm
Oh,
still
okay.
buying it, but I'm adding my wife or husband to the transaction, or my brother, or I'm adding somebody. That's an assignment. So now the contract applies to different people or more people. So that's what an assignment is, and this is just confirming that nobody is getting paid in this option, that nobody is getting any consideration in order for the assignment. So that's the only, I thought that was a note to bring
Are
to your
these
attention.
forms
And
are these forms applied to Northern California as well?
yes, the whole state
Everywhere?
of California. Yeah.
Two quick questions, Rich.
Sure.
First question is, actually, let me just start off with this question. Oftentimes, if you have a listing, you may receive an RPA, and it may say the buyer is Rich Pisani or assignee. What do you think of receiving things like that?
Well, that gives the seller a heads up that this buyer probably is not going to be the buyer at the end of it. So you just need to make the seller aware of that they have the right in the contract that they can assign it without any objection from the seller in the first 17 days. Now, if the seller doesn't want to accept any assignments, they can say, no, I will not accept any assignments. This contract cannot be assigned. You
So
can say that.
Yeah. So writing that in an RPA then is kind of redundant. There's no need for a buyer to even write or assignee.
No, it's not necessary to write or assignee.
Okay. And then my second
You're
question.
only giving a heads up to your seller that it's
Okay.
going to be assigned. Yeah.
And then my second question is, you mentioned if it is assigned, that particular assignee has to go back and sign all the previous documents, everything.
Not sign,
Initial. Everything.
initial, yes.
Where would
That's
they?
that's in the anywhere on the form.
Anywhere
It
on the
just
page.
needs to be
Okay.
anywhere, yeah.
Great.
Just to show every page that they looked at every page.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So next one, let's see. All right. Notice of change in terms of tenancy. This is the change, and it's the landlord can make changes per the contract, 30 days, of the, I'm raising the rent, I'm terminating the tenancy, whatever they can make these changes as long as they're lawful changes, obviously. And then they give that notice to the tenant. The change in this is a notation that tenant, once this notice of change of tenancy has been delivered to you pursuant to paragraph 5, and we'll look at paragraph 5, the specified change to your tenancy will take effect on that date identified before paragraph 1, even if you don't sign it. It's like, I'm giving you this notice. I have every right to give you this notice, and we'd like you to sign it. You don't have to sign it. It's still not going to make any difference. It's going to go through. So that's what the change in this form was. And notice of delivery, there's 3 ways to do delivery. A copy of the notice was personally delivered, or you serviced by first class mail. A copy of the notice was sent by first class mail. 5 additional days are provided in that notice. A substituted service may be used. You can hire a service to give notice, and you can mail it and then post it on the wall or on the door. So those are the 3 ways of giving notice per this form. So any questions about that? I notated here about the RRR, but I don't think it's a major change to the RRR. Let me look. I'll show it to you. It's not a major change. This is the RRR, and it's if you do end up using an RRR, then it's just a notation here that the seller's agreement applies by signing this agreement or coming to by signing and coming to an agreement. What does this say? Wait, language added to paragraph 2 to make explicit that seller needs to signing RRR form. So the seller has to sign this in order. I don't understand why they made this change. So I shouldn't have even showed it to you, because it's not. It really doesn't. It makes no sense. And then lastly, I'm doing this way, but wait. The one change to the RPA, the only change to the RPA, and Christine Willer knows about this because she talked to me about it.
And you know, it let it go
and
through, Rich. They didn't,
They let it go through? Oh, really?
yeah,
Oh, how
I
funny.
was really surprised they didn't take it out. I was kind of waiting to see what happened. So,
Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? No, I can't find it. 3Q2. 3Q2. Well, that's not okay. I'm gonna do it through CAR forms because it didn't come up. Wait, hold on.
That's the one about the
Bear
additional
with me.
Fortress
It's
Wildfire.
about the report. Yes, it's about the report.
What is
yeah.
that?
And
it's Q2,
yes.
it's Q2 10A Fortress.
Yeah.
It shows up blank until you actually click in the box. And then
Right. You have to you have to click on the box. Hold on. So that's why I have to go to a live version. Hold on. Here we go.
But what the problem was is that they were thinking it was going to be blank, but you can't pick blank. You have to pick it.
But you don't have to pick it, I don't think.
Remember,
I don't think you have to. You could leave it as choose one. You could leave it there. You could not touch it and leave it that way.
it
Wait,
doesn't have
okay,
it doesn't have a choose one. It has not applicable. That was it.
No. Wait, I'm going to show you. Wait, hold on. Okay. All right. So, all right. So the first is let's look at these to see if this was bundled for one. So you have agency, you have fair housing, possible representation of more than one buyer or seller, wire. Here it is, Christine. Buyers and homeowners insurance advisory. So this is the new form that's been bundled with the RPA. It talks all about insurance.
That's so
Okay,
weird. I
so
just
now we're
found
gonna
it,
go.
and it wasn't there. I just pulled my whole thing off car.
Yeah, it should have been. Yeah.
Okay.
So Q2. Okay. So this is how you could leave it like this. Click for additional report. You could leave it like this and not do anything with it. So what this is about, so 3Q2 is about that, it's about the wildfire. So if you have an inkling, and as Christine and I were discussing, that, well, you don't know if it's in a high or very high zone until you get the natural hazard. But if you suspect that it is, then you would click here and you go the Fortress wildfire disclosure, who's going to pay for it, and then you can pick your provider. And these are my NHD, who we have affiliation with. They supply this report. So and it's just like any other report of like a disclosure report, like the NHD or that. So I'm going to show you a sample of what this thing looks like. So this is the only change on the RPA this time, and that is, if you want, you can ask. I mean, why would you have the buyer pay for it? The only reason to do it is to have the seller pay for it.
Rich?
Yeah.
It's Jasmine. For that, would it default to my NHD? Do we need to specify Chris there as well?
No, because
Okay.
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jasmine, it doesn't default to my NHD. There's a whole bunch of them there. Snap is there, all of them. I
Right.
did look at
Yeah,
them.
they're all. Yeah, there's a whole bunch.
Okay.
Of First American.
It's
Yeah,
$140,
all those.
by the way.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
$140, and so that is the only change. So if you have a suspicion that it is in a high or very high zone, then ask the seller to supply this report. It's new. Christine said she got it through. If I was representing the seller, I'd say, I'm not going to give you this report. But I don't know.
What is it, like $100?
So
for the
actually,
report?
it's 140. But actually, if you are representing a seller, it's more protection for you to supply this report, saying, "Hey, look, I've supplied this report." They had, and that's only if it's in a high or very high zone. If you're the listing agent and you're not there, then you absolutely counter this act. But otherwise, you can, and you can choose not applicable. But why would you choose not applicable if you really aren't sure? I would say don't ever choose not applicable, because if you don't know 100% that it's not applicable, then you kind of messed up there. Okay. I was going to say something else. Does some seller have to receive a pre-approval letter from any assignee before adding them to the deal? No, they don't. Sorry, we were going backwards. So I'm going to stop sharing this, because that is that. But I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you a non-compliant sample. And this is what this thing looks like. All right. So it is specific to the property that your seller is, or your buyer is buying. And it's an aerial assessment of the property. So it gives all these disclaimers and whatnot, and you can read all about this. It says that, hey, you're in a very high zone subject to AB 38. That's the assembly bill. And hey, you're not compliant. Now you see all these things. There's red things here, and there's yellow things here, and then there's green things. So it's taking the property and going out in zones, and what's compliant, what's not compliant, and this is strictly by an aerial, from satellites. They can take pictures of any property and spy on you. So just so you know, and it talks about all of this. So I don't know why on this one they're all green, but anyways, that would be a compliant report. So zone 0 is the house. Zone 1 is I think it's 50 feet, and then 100, and then it goes beyond that. So and it shows you everything that's whether it's compliant or not compliant. And then it will go over, it also goes over somewhere, let me see. It even went so far as, trim this tree, yeah, right here. Zone 1, trim trees to separate canopies by 10 feet and limb up 6 feet from the ground. Remove Zone 2, remove fuels in accordance with Zone 2, 2 trees. And so it goes, that's what this report is. So it does an aerial assessment of the property and gives the buyer more information. Now, once again, buyer is not responsible, seller is not responsible prior to close of escrow to bring something in compliance. It's up to the buyer to do it within 1 year. Now, obviously, this would be a negotiating thing that the buyer can say, hey, I want, these things taken care of before close of escrow. Why should I take care of it, within the next year? So anyways, so that's what this report is. And did you get the report yet, Christine?
No, I'm still waiting. We're still in a,
Okay.
still got happening here, negotiating. By the way, I did have it, Rich. I didn't have my glasses on. And I, for some reason, misread that it said BHIA, that it said something different. So I did have it.
Okay. All right. What do you think it said? Anyways.
I don't know.
That's what this report is. It's just another report, it's not required. It's nothing that is required. It is, if you're representing, a buyer, it's an added tool, information. So that's, that's just for your information. Yeah.
If you did submit an offer before this class and didn't really know the specifics of that, and you did select not applicable on the RPA, if you get into an escrow, can you just suggest to your buyer, maybe we should get this form and still order it?
Sure. Yeah, you can. The buyer can always pay for it anytime. The only reason why to put it in the RPA is to make sure that the seller pays for it, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I didn't quite
because once you put it in, if the buyer is paying for it, and once you put it in the RPA, then any lender is going to want to see it. So then I
I checked that.
yeah.
I didn't really realize all that. But anyway, what's done is done.
But
quick question.
But hold on. One thing I want to stress is, once again, it's really important not to put, if you're not sure, not applicable, because basically what you're saying is that this isn't, you're saying that it's not in a high or very high zone, and you don't know that. So that can have ramifications going forward.
Yeah.
So I don't want you to put not applicable. So that's why I really want to stress that. Yeah, go ahead, Susan.
Mina, is she aware of the latest forms, just as Michael, I think, was asking about the TC, because I just opened escrow on Monday. So I just wanted to know if she's up to date as far as the new forms, and we can work.
There's only one new form, and it's bundled in the RPA. Yeah.
Okay, so if I got an offer on the 31st, was that in it?
Yes, it was.
Perfect, thanks.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
You think maybe you can suggest to, I don't know, Zipforms, or who you would make the suggestion to, that they just remove that not applicable option?
Yeah, that probably would be a good idea.
Yeah, like I said, I get it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. That was it, guys. That's all of them. I mean, there was tons others, but there's ones that we don't really deal with, and it's a change of initials. They've removed an initial here. It's it's ridiculous changes. I just wanted you to know what the major changes were and how they affected the forms. So anybody else have any questions? Oh my God, this one time we're gonna end on time. Okay. All right, so that's it. I'm going to stop. I did say record. Where'd that go? The thing moves. I don't know. Once I end it, it'll stop. Okay. So, all right. So everybody have a good rest of
Thanks, Rich.
the night,
Thank
and
you.
we'll see you in a couple of weeks. All right.
Thanks a
Take
lot.
care.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Rich.